to the Jewish Week online. I'm your host, Aaron Herman. When you hear the word hologram, the first thing that might come to your mind is Star Trek. But the ICT Graphics Lab and the Shoah Foundation are going to be using holograms to tell the stories of Holocaust survivors. Let's take a closer look.
My name is Pinchas Guter. I will answer any questions you might have for me.
How old were you when the war ended?
I was between the ages of 13 and 14 when the war ended in 1945.
Do you remember any songs from your youth?
This is a lullaby that my mother used to sing to me, and I still remember it. It's in Polish. Jadą dzieci, jadą drogą, siostrzyczka I brat, I nawidzieć się nie mogą, jaki piękny świat.
Thank you, and thanks very much for your interest. Well, I work at the University of Southern California's Institute for Creative Technologies, which is trying to perform research in new kinds of virtual reality, and we've been doing that for some time. But a little over a year ago, we got approached by the Shoah Foundation Institute, which, as you might know, was started by Steven Spielberg after he made the movie Schindler's List in the 1990s. And then set at USC with the goal of trying to record and preserve the testimony of the survivors of the Holocaust. He realized even back then that these people are aging, they have amazing stories to tell, and they have incredibly important stories to tell. And so they have, over their period of time, logged thousands upon thousands of hours of testimony on, beta SP videotape. Well, the thought was that we're kind of toward the end of when we can really record these stories as well as possible, and there's new technology available. There's higher resolution cameras. There's the opportunity to shoot in 3D stereo, and there was the thought maybe we could actually record this in a way that would be holographic, so that when future holographic displays are created, that we could actually show these people exactly as they were, exactly what they said, but three-dimensionally, projecting them life-size into, for example, a classroom situation. And it would seem like they're really there. And with a little bit of artificial intelligence technology coming from our natural language group, potentially even answer the questions of school children or audience members who want to ask them about their experiences.
Right, so there's a question I have is that I think the project is brilliant. I remember watching the video, the hologram of Tupac, and I was like, can you, how do you take that experience and actually bring it over to the educational world? Because there's so much you can do now, and sort of like thinking out of the box. So how does that work with like asking questions?
Well, I'm actually standing in front of a device that we call Light Stage 6. So it's a sphere of LED illumination that you can see right here. And we did a sort of a trial test of this project with the Shoah Foundation Institute and the ICT's Natural Language Group with a real survivor of the Holocaust, Mr. Pinchas Guter, who was in a concentration camp in Poland as a teenager, and he lost both of his parents there very sadly. He has had a wonderful and rich life eventually, however, and goes around to classrooms and tells of his experiences, and he's done this for some time. He's a wonderful storyteller. And we actually had him here in our light stage getting filmed, answering about 3 hours of questions from Stephen Smith, the head of the Shoah Foundation Institute, with 3 different types of technology. We had, first of all, very high resolution cameras filming him. We had multiple cameras filming him in high speed as well. And then we were also using our light stage device, which also gets used on various kinds of Hollywood visual effects movies, to shoot him with something called time multiplex illumination. When we record somebody in that way, we're actually changing the illumination on them very quickly. It looks like these lights are solid on right now, but the dome is actually very rapidly lighting the person in the middle, from the front, from the back, from the left, from the right, from above, and from below. And as a result, the high-speed cameras pick up all these different lighting passes, and we can compute how the light plays off of the face, which is another way of computing the three-dimensionality of what they're doing in there.
One of the other parts of this project is finding, I guess, there's already, as you mentioned, hours and hours of footage. How are you going to pick and choose what to use, or picking and choosing the survivors?
Well, the Shoah Foundation works with a lot of different survivors, and there are, very sadly, quite few left at this point. I just heard that maybe the estimate of the ones who would be available to tell their stories might be in the low hundreds at this point. But they're in touch with many of these people. There are folks that they've recorded 10 years ago. And the goal would be to get some of the people who have some of the richest stories to tell and who are the best storytellers, and of course are willing to work with us, to answer maybe 12 hours of questions asked over the course of 3 days. So we don't want to completely tire these people out, but it will be an intense experience, with the goal of getting a database of so many possible responses to so many possible questions, so that once they tell some of their stories holographically to an audience, the audience can actually ask questions. A microphone will get passed around. They'll ask a question to the microphone. Natural language understanding technology will figure out which response is most appropriate for that question, and then it will play that back. So there can be a Q&A period afterwards.
What excites you about the project?
I'm very excited about trying to recreate as much as possible this amazing experience. I got to be here when they were interviewing Pinchas Gutter, and just with how good a storyteller he is, and I mean really how wrenching some of the things that he has to talk about, of course, with this subject matter. It's a deeply emotional experience, and it really changes you, and it's so sad to realize that we are in the waning years of being able to hear these testimonies directly from the people who were there. It's such important stuff. So if we can get something that's even 10% of that experience preserved, we know we can shoot video, we can show high-def video of people. That only goes so far. If we can get maybe 10% further toward what it's like to actually be in their presence, to hear their stories from them in person, and to have that interaction, I think we will have done something very valuable. And I think the technology is just at that perfect point where we're going to be able to record what we need now, so that as we develop the holographic display technology, we have a pretty good one that's about 8 by 10 inches that we can put a face on. We're working on building the full-size one. I think it's going to be pretty amazing, and I can't imagine more interesting and important material to try to be visualizing.
When I was watching the simulation, it touched me in a way that I didn't expect, because especially in these days when you have a lot of Holocaust deniers, you think in the next 5-10 years, when unfortunately a lot of these survivors aren't going to be around, what can you do? And this is just a wonderful solution to be able to come to the classroom, speak, have that interaction that you would never ever imagine could happen. It's just it's really the future of the Holocaust education, and the way that my grandparents survived the Holocaust, and I went to the camps on the college martial living, and I think back of trying to tell a story, but when you actually now hear those survivors, because that's always the most powerful experience, that is your key. And seeing that, it was incredibly moving, and it gives hope that when you see Never Again, that this really is a tool to ensure the future of education.
Absolutely. I mean, everything really comes into a completely new perspective to be working with this kind of material, and we've gotten to do some relatively high-profile projects, from scanning actors from Avatar to getting some of our technology used in the latest video game engines. But seriously, this is something that It's really inspiring us to invent everything that we possibly can, figure out that, within the budgetary constraints, every single pixel that we can record of this so that we can display this into the future is getting expended at this point, and the material just clearly deserves it.
Do you have like a time frame? I mean, like in the next year, do you know right now how many people you want to record?
Yeah, I think we will have, the goal currently is to do 10 survivors. We're hoping to get the first of them in early this year and then start in the fall with getting more people to come through. And the holographic display, again, we had an 8x10-inch version. We have all of the video projectors necessary for the life-size version, and we'll start building that out over the spring. Maybe by the end of summer, we'll actually have some of Pinchas Guter, life-size holographically, and hopefully it kind of looks a little bit like he's right in front of you.
Yeah, whenever I think about it, it really is something out of a science fiction movie. Like we as people who want to propel the memory of the Holocaust, using technology is a wonderful way now to really say what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. As technology evolves, so does education. And now we're actually talking about holograms, and it's just amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's going to be there. It's like we've wanted to be able to see in 3D without the glasses on our TVs for a long time now. With the experiments that we've done and what we've seen, it's clear that this is going to be a reality, and it's going to be a relatively standard way of experiencing content, certainly 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We want these stories to seem immediate and relevant 100 years from now, 500 years from now. And you can go back to any particular intersection of history and technology to the fact okay, we had some very great photographs of Abraham Lincoln. Photography hadn't been around too long before then, but that helps us really humanize that part of history in a way that we don't have for presidents who came earlier before him. We want absolutely the best that technology can offer today available to these survivors and what they have to say as their legacy goes into the future.
Can you walk us through the process? So after you do the shoot, what happens on your end to make it now come alive?
Well, we walk away from the light stage with a huge amount of video data, multiple cameras running at high frame rates, high resolution. So what we have to do is take all of this video and run three-dimensional reconstruction algorithms on it to go from the multiple 2D video streams to the three-dimensional version of the shape of the survivor as they're making hand gestures, as they're speaking, as they move their head, even the things that a person just does with their feet as they sit in a chair as they're speaking is part of their presence, and you can read emotional state from that. So this is terabytes upon terabytes of data. We have to run it through these algorithms that run on GPU units, the same high-end graphics cards that people might use to play the latest Halo video game. Those are going to be crunching very hard around the clock on multiple computers to figure out the three-dimensional shape, the reflectance properties, the texture map, as it were, for them. And then it all gets diced into what the different video projectors of the holographic display are going to show. Then all of that will run on computers. They'll be essentially playing almost 300 different movies from different angles of the survivor. Unlike the Tupac hologram, which is actually just 2D video floating in space. It works if you're an audience that's far away from the subject. We need these holograms to work close up. When Pinchas goes to a classroom, the children are, sitting 8 feet away from him. That's important to be able to, for a life-size subject to really see the subtleties of the facial expression and what they're saying. So we need this to actually work so that if you're sitting in front, you see him from the front. If you're sitting to the right, then you see him from the right. If you see him from the sitting to the left, you see him from the left. And that's what our technology can do. as a result, you not only see 3D because your two eyes are getting different views, but even as you just kind of naturally shift back and forth, you get what's called motion parallax that will increase the feeling of the solidity of the they are really there. And we're also working with a technology that can illuminate the survivor with the appropriate lighting for the room that they're being projected into. So if you have windows off to the side here, you'll actually see that same light of those same windows illuminating their face from that angle, and you'll be able to see that much more what it would look like if they were really there with you. So it's a lot of processing. It's quite a bit of technology development, but all of this is being accelerated throughout this year, and I think we'll be able to, by this time next year, I think we'll have some good examples of it.
As you can see, holograms are going to be an incredible resource to helping future generations understand what survivors went through in the Holocaust. This is Aaron Herman, and thanks for watching.